Asterisk, asterisk. Part 1. Red Dust and Invisible Boundaries. Asterisk, asterisk. The autumn wind carried more than dust that October morning in 1878. It brought change. Though Maeve Callahan couldn't have known it as she hauled another bucket from the well behind Salt Cedar Crossing, the water came up cold and clear, defying the drought that had turned the Sweetwater Valley into a bowl of rust-colored earth. She paused at the well's edge, watching the horizon where the sky pressed down like a flat iron on the Wyoming territory. 3 months since Declan's burial, and still she caught herself setting 2 cups for morning coffee. Habit died harder than men out here. The rider appeared as a dark smudge against the western ridge, moving slow and deliberate, like a man with nowhere particular to be. Maeve set the bucket down and wiped her hands on her apron, tasting grit between her teeth. Storm coming from the west, judging by the wall of red dust building behind the stranger. She didn't reach for the Winchester propped inside the door. Not yet, but her fingers found the leather pouch in her pocket, counting coins by feel. $27.40. All that stood between her and losing the station. The horse was a dun mare, trail-worn but well-kept. The man sitting her looked about the same, weathered but holding together. He stopped at the invisible line where her property began, marked by nothing but a crooked fence post and the change in the dirt's color where Declan had spent 3 years hauling river silt to make a garden. "Ma'am?" The rider touched his hat brim. Not a fancy gesture, just acknowledgement. His voice carried the rasp of alkali dust and too many miles. "Mr. Maeve kept her tone neutral. "Storm's coming. You looking for shelter?" "If you're offering..." He shifted in the saddle, and she caught the slight favor of his left leg. Old injury, the kind men collected like souvenirs out here. "Name's Jonah Avery. Maeve Callahan. It's $2 for the night. Includes supper and a stall for your horse. $3 if you want breakfast." He studied her with eyes the color of winter sage. "Fair enough. Payment in advance." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Cautious, that's wise." He swung down from the mare, that left leg definitely giving him trouble, and pulled a worn leather wallet from his vest. The movement was careful, deliberate, keeping his hands well away from the navy colt on his hip. "Maeve noticed?" "Out here, what a man didn't do told you as much as what he did." He counted out $3 silver, then added a 4th. "For grain. If you have it, ladies earned her oats." She pocketed the coins, feeling their weight like tiny anchors. "Stable's around back. There's a pump for washing up. Supper's at 6. "Obliged." He gathered his mare's reins, then paused. "That storm's going to be a bad one. Might want to secure anything loose." As if to underscore his words, a gust sent her washing dancing on the line like ghosts at a revival. Maeve nodded, already calculating what needed doing. The chicken coop door, the loose board on the stable roof, Well, what have we here?" The new voice made them both turn. 5 riders had materialized from the south, moving with the easy confidence of men who expected the world to step aside. Their leader, Pike Harlan, wore a black duster that probably cost more than Maeve made in a month. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Mrs. Callahan." Pike touched his hat with mocking courtesy. "And a stranger. You branching out into the hotel business?" "What do you want?" "Pike." Maeve kept her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. These were Silas Duval's men, and Duval's men meant trouble. "Just being neighborly. Mr. Duval wanted me to remind you about his offer. Very generous, considering." "My answer hasn't changed." Pike's smile widened. "Now, that's a shame. See, Mr. Duval's a patient man, but even patient men have limits. There's a water rights meeting next week. Lots of talk about usage fees, territorial regulations, complicated stuff. A widow might find it overwhelming." Jonah had gone very still beside his mare, the kind of stillness that made Maeve think of a coiled spring. I manage fine. She said, "Do you?" Pike leaned forward in his saddle. "Because I heard there might be some questions about back taxes. Seems the territorial assessor found some discrepancies. Dated 3 months back, oddly enough. 3 months, when Declan died." Maeve's hands clenched in her apron, but she kept her face neutral. "That's a legal matter. I'll handle it legally." "Legal?" Pike savored the word like good whiskey. "Funny thing about legal, it's whatever Judge Patterson says it is. And the judge, well, he's a sociable man. Dines with Mr. Duval every Sunday." One of Pike's men snickered. Another spat tobacco juice dangerously close to Maeve's wash line. "The lady said she'll handle it." Jonah's voice was quiet, conversational almost. He dropped his mare's reins and stood with his hands loose at his sides, not threatening, not backing down either. Pike's attention shifted to him like a hawk spotting movement. "Don't believe we've been introduced, friend." "Don't believe we have. You picked an interesting place to stop for the night." "Seemed quiet enough." "Was." Pike's hand drifted toward his gun belt. "Just a drift. Nothing actionable." "Might want to keep riding come morning, storm or no storm." "Might." Jonah nodded agreeably. "Then again, I paid for breakfast." The silence stretched taut. Maeve found herself holding her breath. Violence hung in the air like the coming dust storm, waiting for an excuse. Pike broke first, laughing like it was all a grand joke. "A man who values his breakfast, I respect that." He gathered his reins. "Mrs. Callahan, you think on Mr. Duval's offer. Think real hard. Winter's coming, and it's hard for a woman alone. Accidents happen, wolves, weather, equipment failures. Is that a threat?" "It's a fact of life." Pike touched his hat again. "Boys, let's ride. We've delivered our message." They wheeled their horses and spurred away, leaving dust devils dancing in their wake. Maeve realized she'd been holding her breath and let it out slow. "Friends of yours?" Jonah asked mildly. "Silas Duval owns the Double D Ranch and half the water rights in the valley. He wants the other half." "Which you have." "Which my husband filed on, legal and proper, 5 years ago." She looked at him directly. "This isn't your fight, Mr. Avery." "No, ma'am. Just observing that 5-to-1 odds seem unfriendly." 5-to-1 is generous around here." She glanced at the darkening sky. "Better get your horse settled. That storm won't wait for social niceties." He nodded and led his mare around the building. Maeve watched him go, noting the economy of his movements, the way he checked corners and sight lines without seeming to. A careful man, maybe careful enough to survive what was coming. The wind picked up, driving grit against the windows. She hurried inside to secure what she could, but her mind kept circling back to Pike's words. Back taxes dated 3 months ago. Sheriff Kit's signature would be on those papers. Sure as sunrise, Kit, who owed his badge to Duval money. The first fat drops of rain spattered against the glass, mixed with dust to make mud in midair. Maeve pulled Declan's strongbox from under the floorboards and rifled through the papers until she found it the original water rights claim, properly witnessed and filed. Below it, folded and yellow with age, lay the map Declan had drawn of the underground springs. His cramped handwriting filled the margins, old Mission Aqueduct Spanish construction still sound after 100 years. At the bottom, underlined twice, "Trust no badges." Thunder cracked overhead like God's own rifle shot. The storm had arrived in earnest now. Driving sheets of rain mixed with dust against the walls. Through the kitchen window, she saw Jonah struggling with the stable door as the wind tried to tear it from its hinges. Without thinking, she grabbed Declan's oilcloth slicker from its peg and ran out into the tempest. The wind hit her like a fist, driving her sideways. She fought through it to the stable, where Jonah was trying to hold the door and hammer a loose board simultaneously. "Here!" she had to shout over the wind. Together they wrestled the door closed and dropped the bar. Inside, his mare stood calm as Sunday. Munching oats like storms were beneath her notice. "Thank you." Water streamed from his hat brim. In the dim light filtering through the cracks, she could see him better. 40, maybe, with lines that spoke of sun and wind and harder weather. A scar pulled at the corner of his left eye, old and white against sun-dark skin. "That board's been loose for weeks," she said, suddenly aware they were alone in the close darkness, rain drumming overhead like 1,000 drummers. "I kept meaning to fix it." "Happens. Too much work, not enough hands." He tested the door. It held. "This storm's got some anger in it." "Everything's got anger in it lately." The words came out more bitter than she intended. He looked at her then, really looked, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he saw more than she meant to show. "Your husband, recent—" 3 months. She pulled the slicker tighter. "Thrown from his horse. They said neck broke clean." "They said—" She met his eyes. Declan rode like he was born in the saddle. That horse was gentle as a lamb. Jonah nodded slowly. "Accidents happen." "So everyone keeps telling me." Lightning flashed, showing his face in stark relief. Something moved in his expression, understanding. Maybe, or recognition of a familiar story. "Water rights, they're worth killing for out here." It wasn't a question. Maeve felt something ease in her chest. Here was someone who wouldn't pretend, wouldn't mouth platitudes about God's will and moving on. "The sheriff investigated for all of 10 minutes, said the horse spooked at a rattler. October's late for rattlers." "That's what I said." She laughed, short and sharp. "Sheriff Kit said I was overwrought with grief, suggested I might be happier back east with family." "You have family back east." "I have $27 in this station. That's all the family I need." The storm chose that moment to slam something heavy against the roof. They both looked up, then at each other, and somehow the shared concern broke the tension. She was suddenly aware of how she must look soaked despite the slicker, hair escaping its pins, probably mud to her knees. "Come on," she said. "Let's get back before we have to swim." They made the dash together, the wind trying to knock them flat. By the time they reached the kitchen door, they were both laughing the breathless, slightly hysterical laughter of people who've shared something ridiculous. Inside, water pooled around their feet. Maeve hung the slicker and gestured to the stove. "Coffee's hot. Least I can do after you fixed my stable." "It's your coffee." But he accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping long fingers around the warmth. They stood there, dripping and steaming slightly in the heat from the stove, while outside the storm raged like all the furies of hell were loose. The lamplight made a circle of gold in the darkness, holding the wild night at bay. "Mr. Avery," she said finally. "Jonah, you seem like a man who's seen trouble." "Some." "Then you know it follows patterns. Pike showing up today, right when you happened to be here, that wasn't coincidence." "No, ma'am, I don't expect it was." "So I'll ask you straight. Are you one of Duval's men? Some kind of scout or spy?" He set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "No, but I understand why you'd ask." "Then what are you—" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice carried the weight of old stones. "Just a man looking for a place to stop running." Something in the way he said it made her throat tight. She knew about running, about the weight that drove you forward when all you wanted was to stand still. "Well," she said finally, "you picked a hell of a place to stop." "Seems like—" He met her eyes. "Question is, what happens come morning?" Outside, thunder rolled across the valley like artillery. Maeve thought about Pike's threats, about back taxes and badges you couldn't trust, about a good horse that suddenly forgot how to run. "Come morning," she said quietly, "I go to town and file an objection to those taxes. I send a telegram to the territorial capital. I fight this legal, like I said. And if legal doesn't work—" She thought about Declan's map, about water flowing through channels 100 years old, about trust and badges and the weight of $27 in her pocket. Then I guess we find out what kind of woman I really am. The storm chose that moment to knock something loose on the roof, a sound like giants walking. They both looked up. Then Jonah grabbed his hat. "That's the stable roof again. We'd better—" But Maeve was already reaching for the slicker. "Together," she said. "It'll take both of us." They plunged back into the storm, side by side, while overhead the sky cracked open and poured out all its fury. Tomorrow would bring pike and taxes and all the machinery of legal theft. But tonight, there was just the storm and the work and two people refusing to let it win. Asterisk, asterisk. Part 2. The breath of law and the price of water. Asterisk, asterisk. The road to Red Bluff stretched before them like a dusty accusation. Every rut and stone familiar to Maeve's wagon wheels. Jonah rode alongside on his dun mare, having insisted on accompanying her despite her protests about it not being his fight. A woman alone on these roads might attract the wrong kind of attention, he'd said over breakfast, and she couldn't argue with the truth of it. Not after Pike's visit yesterday. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the storm's moisture and leaving only the eternal dust. Red Bluff squatted on the horizon like a toad made of unpainted lumber and failed dreams. The church steeple pointed at heaven with more hope than conviction. "Used to be a decent town," Maeve said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Before the railroad surveys started, before Duval moved in with his Eastern money." "Money changes things," Jonah agreed. "Usually not for the better." They passed the cemetery on the outskirts, its wooden crosses and stone markers telling the short stories of hard lives. Maeve's eyes found Declan's grave without trying, still fresh enough that the earth hadn't fully settled. She'd carved his marker herself. Declan Callahan, husband, water finder, died for truth. Sheriff Kit had suggested that last line might be inflammatory. She'd carved it deeper. The main street of Red Bluff was busy for a Tuesday morning. Freight wagons lined up outside Morrison's general store, and the saloon was already doing steady business. But Maeve noticed how conversations died as she passed, how eyes followed their progress with the weight of unspoken knowledge. "Popular woman," Jonah observed mildly. "Notorious is more like it. The widow who won't sell." She pulled up outside the courthouse, a grand name for a building that looked like it might blow away in a strong wind. "This shouldn't take long." "I'll walk with you." "That's not necessary." "Ma'am." His voice was quiet but firm. "Let me tell you what I see. 3 of Duval's men outside the saloon, trying to look casual, another 2 by the bank, your sheriff's watching from his office window. You walk in there alone. Anything could happen and nobody would see a thing." She looked where he indicated, recognizing the truth of it. "And if you come with me, then there's a witness. Makes people think twice." Inside the courthouse, Clerk Winters sat behind his desk like a nervous rabbit. His Adam's apple bobbed when he saw them enter. "Mrs. Callahan, what can that is, how may I help you?" "I need to file an objection to the back taxes assessed on my property." She placed the papers on his desk with deliberate calm. "And I need to register my water rights claim with the territorial office." Winter's eyes darted to the door, then back. "Well, now, those are matters that need to go through Sheriff Kit's office first, for verification." "Since when?" "New regulation, just last month. All property disputes have to be locally verified before—" "Show me the regulation." It's not written down yet, but Sheriff Kit said—" "The sheriff doesn't make territorial law, Mr. Winters." Maeve leaned forward slightly. "Now, are you going to file these papers? Or do I need to send that telegram to the territorial governor explaining how Red Bluff is inventing its own laws?" Winters went pale. His hand shook as he reached for the papers, but before he could take them, another hand slammed down on the desk. "Now, Homer, let's not be hasty." Sheriff Kit stood there like bad weather personified, big, broad, with a badge that gleamed like a warning. His smile never reached his eyes, which were the flat gray of river stones. "Sheriff," Maeve said evenly, "this is legal business." "Everything in my town is my business, Mrs. Callahan." He picked up her papers, made a show of examining them. "Back taxes. That's a serious matter. Could lose your property over something like that. Which is why I'm filing an objection. Those taxes were never assessed while my husband was alive." "Well, now, that's the question, isn't it?" Kit's smile widened. "Seems there might have been an oversight, clerical error. These things happen. 3 months' worth of clerical errors, all backdated to before Declan died. Coincidences are funny things." His attention shifted to Jonah. "Don't believe we've met, friend." Jonah Avery. Just passing through. Just stopped for the storm. Smart man. Though you might want to move on soon. Red Bluff can be unhealthy for strangers who get involved in local matters. Jonah met his gaze steadily. "I've noticed that about a lot of towns." Something passed between the two men, a kind of recognition that made Maeve think of wolves circling. Kit's hand drifted to his gun belt. Not a threat, just a reminder. "Homer," Kit said without looking away from Jonah. "File Mrs. Callahan's papers. Make sure they get all the proper stamps and signatures." Winters nearly collapsed with relief. "Yes, sir, right away." "And Mrs. Callahan." Kit's smile was all teeth. "You've got 3 days to pay those taxes or vacate. That's the law." "That's not—" "That's the law, as I interpret it. You want to argue? Hire a lawyer. Though you might find they're all mighty busy these days." He touched his hat and strolled out, boot heels striking the floor like a countdown. Winters stamped Maeve's papers with shaking hands, filed them in a drawer she suspected would be empty by nightfall. Outside, the sun seemed too bright. Maeve stood on the boardwalk, trying to steady her breathing. 3 days. $27 wouldn't even cover the interest on what they were claiming. "Miss—" The voice was soft, cultured. Maeve turned to find a woman in a schoolteacher's modest dress, books clutched to her chest. Ada Finch had arrived in Red Bluff 6 months ago, bringing education and a whiff of Eastern propriety to the frontier town. "Miss Finch." "Walk with me a moment." Ada glanced around nervously. "To the schoolhouse. I have something that might interest you." They walked, Jonah trailing at a respectful distance. The schoolhouse sat at the town's edge, painted white with hope and already peeling with reality. Inside, Ada went straight to her desk, pulled out a telegram form. "I have friends in the territorial capital," she said quietly. "People who believe in proper law, not whatever Sheriff Kit is selling. Send this to the address I've written. Tell them everything." Maeve took the form, saw the coded phrase Ada had written, "Weather report urgently needed." Below it, an address for someone named J. Crawford. "Why are you helping me?" Ada's proper composure cracked slightly. "Because what happened to your husband wasn't right. Because water should belong to the people who work the land, not whoever has the deepest pockets." She straightened. "And because I have my own reasons for wanting Silas Duval brought down a peg or two." "Be careful," Maeve warned. "They don't take kindly to interference." "Neither do I." Ada's smile was sharp as a letter opener. "Send the telegram. Help will come." They left the schoolhouse to find a crowd gathering near the stables. Pike Harlan stood in the middle of it, loud and theatrical. "Now that's a fine animal," he was saying, examining Jonah's mare. "Good bloodlines, the kind of horse a man might have acquired in, say, Colorado, maybe around Pueblo." Jonah stood very still. "She's been mine for 3 years, bought and paid for." "Sure about that, because I heard there was some trouble down Pueblo way. Something about a deputy marshal and a witness who didn't make it to trial." Pike's grin was vicious. Course, that was a few years back. Man involved probably changed his name, moved on, maybe grew his hair out, stopped wearing a badge. The crowd murmured. Maeve felt the shift in atmosphere, the smell of blood in the water. You're fishing, Jonah said quietly. Maybe, or maybe I sent a telegram of my own last night. Amazing how fast news travels these days. Pike raised his voice. Folks, you might want to step back. This man might be dangerous. The only danger here, Jonah said, still in that deadly quiet voice, is a man who threatens women and hides behind hired guns. Pike's face flushed. You calling me a coward? I'm observing that you travel in packs and pick on widows. Draw your own conclusions. The street went silent. Pike's hand hovered over his gun, trembling with rage and maybe something else. Fear, Maeve realized. He'd expected Jonah to run or deny, not this calm readiness. Pike! A new voice cut through the tension. Doctor. Elias Moore pushed through the crowd, medical bag in hand. Your boss wanted you back at the ranch. Something about the north pasture. Pike's jaw worked like he was chewing nails. This isn't over, Avery, or whatever your real name is. It never is, Jonah agreed. Pike stormed off, his remaining dignity trailing behind like dust. The crowd dispersed slowly, disappointed at the lack of bloodshed. Doctor. Moore approached them, his lined face grave. Mrs. Callahan, might I have a word privately? They stepped into the alley beside his office. Moore looked around nervously before speaking. Your husband came to see me the week before he died. He had bruises on his throat, finger marks. Maeve's heart stopped. What? He made me promise not to tell you, said he'd handle it. But after the accident, Moore's voice dropped. I examined the body. The neck was broken, yes, but those bruises were fresh. Someone held him down. Mrs. Callahan held him until... Why didn't you say something? Shame crossed his face. Because they have Clara. Your daughter. She's staying at the Duval Ranch. For her health, they say, the country air. His hands clenched. She writes me every week. Happy letters. But there's a code we worked out. She's not free to leave. Maeve felt sick. Clara Moore was 9 years old, a bright child who loved books and butterflies. We have to... No. Moore gripped her arm. You do nothing? Not yet. But when the time comes, when you move against them, remember that some of us are with you. Some of us are just waiting for someone brave enough to make the first stand. He hurried away, leaving Maeve reeling. Declan murdered. A child held hostage. The law twisted into a weapon against the very people it should protect. Bad news. Jonah had materialized beside her, quiet as smoke. The worst. She told him what Moore had said. Watched his face darken like a storm building. We need to send that telegram, he said. And we need to prepare for what comes next. She looked at him directly. This isn't your fight. Remember, especially if Pike's right about Colorado. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, 3 years ago, I was a deputy marshal. There was a witness, like Pike said, a woman who saw her employer kill a man over water rights. His voice went flat. She died the night before trial, shot through her window while making dinner. I was supposed to be protecting her. Jonah! I quit the next day. Been drifting since, telling myself I was done with other people's fights. He met her eyes. But some fights come whether you're ready or not, and some things are worth standing for, even if you've failed before. The telegraph office was narrow and dim, smelling of electricity and ambition. The operator took Maeve's message without comment, though his eyes widened at the address. The machine chattered like mechanical teeth, sending words into the vast silence of the wires. As they left, Jonah noticed something. That alley? Someone's watching. A shadow moved quick, furtive. Then a small figure burst from hiding. Clara Moore. 9 years old and running like the devil was behind her. Mrs. Callahan. She slammed into Maeve's skirts, sobbing. I got away when they were changing guards. Please, I need to find my PA. Clara, honey, it's all right. No, the girl's eyes were wild. They're moving the cattle tonight, all of them. Mr. Duval said something about poisoning wells, about making sure nobody could use the land even if they won in court. Jonah knelt beside her. Clara, this is important. Did you hear anything else? They said Hawk's Notch tomorrow night. Something about stopping witnesses before they could testify. Hoofbeats thundered down the street. Kit appeared with 4 deputies, their faces grim. That's far enough. Kit called. Girl's sick, wandered off from her treatment. We'll take her back where she belongs. She belongs with her father. Maeve said. Her father signed custody papers. Legal and proper. Kit's smile was cold. You want to argue? We can do this the hard way. Wouldn't want anyone to get hurt in the confusion. Clara pressed closer to Maeve. Please, she whispered. Don't let them take me. But what could they do? Kit had the law, twisted as it was. He had guns and men and all the weight of paper legitimacy. It's all right, honey, Maeve said, her voice breaking. We'll figure this out. I promise. They took Clara, her small hands reaching back as they lifted her onto a horse. Her father appeared from his office, face carved with anguish. But he didn't move. Couldn't move. The price of defiance was too clear. The sun was sinking by the time Maeve and Jonah started back to Salt Cedar Crossing. Neither spoke for miles, the weight of the day settling like dust on their shoulders. Finally, Jonah broke the silence. They'll come tonight. I know. That telegram might bring help, but not in time. I know that too. So what do we do? Maeve thought about water rights and murdered husbands, about little girls held hostage and good men forced to bow, about the map hidden under her floorboards and the knowledge it contained. We make them think they've won, she said slowly. Give them a map that shows what they want to see. Let them dig their own graves while we prepare the real surprise. That's dangerous. If they figure out the deception, then we'd better make it convincing. She looked at him sideways. Still want to help even knowing what Pike might have learned about Colorado? His laugh was dry as dust. Ma'am, after today, I figure my reputation's shot anyway. Might as well go down swinging. The lights of Salt Cedar Crossing appeared ahead, lonely beacons in the vast darkness, somewhere out there. Duval's men were moving cattle and planning poison. Clara Moore was locked in a room, writing coded letters, and in the territorial capital, a telegram was working its way up the chain of command. The law had failed them. Justice had been bought and sold. But water, Maeve thought. Water always finds a way. And tomorrow, she'd show them exactly what that meant. Asterisk, asterisk. Part 3, the title scene, Water Washes Dust. Sunset keeps secrets, asterisk, asterisk. The noon sun hammered down like a blacksmith's forge, turning the air into something you could almost chew. Maeve had spent the morning creating the false map, aging it with coffee grounds and careful burns along the edges. Every line had to be perfect, believable enough to fool Duval's men, wrong enough to lead them away from the real water source. You've done this before, Jonah observed, watching her work. Declan taught me. Said a woman alone needed more than one kind of weapon. She held the map up to the light, checking her handiwork. He was right about most things. Jonah had been restless all morning, checking windows, walking the perimeter. Now he stood at the door, squinting west. I'm going to scout that direction, he said. If they're moving cattle through Hawk's Notch, there'll be signs. Be careful. He touched his hat. Always am. After he left, Maeve tried to focus on preparations hiding the real map, securing what valuables she had, loading the Winchester, but the heat made everything feel like moving through molasses. By mid-afternoon, She gave up and retreated to the relative cool of the root cellar, sorting through preserves that might need to last through a siege. When she emerged, the sun was starting its descent, painting the world in shades of amber and rust. No sign of Jonah. Worry gnawed at her, but she pushed it down. He was a grown man who'd survived this long. He didn't need her fretting. She was drawing water from the well when she heard the soft splash of disturbed water from the direction of the river. Not the crossing itself, but the hidden pool upstream where the cottonwoods grew thick and the current gentled into something almost peaceful. Maeve set down the bucket, indecision warring with concern. Could be an animal. Could be trouble. Could be Jonah found hurt, needing help. She took the rifle and moved quiet through the brush, following deer trails Declan had shown her. The sound of water grew louder, and then she heard something else. A low, tuneless humming. A man's voice, relaxed and unguarded. The trail curved, and she stepped careful around a boulder. What she saw stopped her like she'd hit a wall. Asterisk. He bathed naked in the river at sunset, and the widow's eyes wouldn't look away. Jonah stood waist-deep in the pool, water streaming from his hair as he surfaced from a dive. The setting sun caught the droplets on his skin, turning them to liquid gold. But it wasn't the unexpected intimacy of the moment that held her frozen. It was the map of scars across his back and shoulders. Lines and ridges that spoke of violence survived, of a body that had endured more than any person should. He turned slightly, and she saw more the puckered mark of an old bullet wound near his ribs, the thin white line of a knife across his chest. This wasn't the body of a mere deputy marshal. This was someone who'd walked through hell and somehow kept walking. Maeve knew she should leave, slip away before he noticed. It was the decent thing, the proper thing. But something held her there, not desire. Exactly. Though she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach, it was more like recognition. Here was someone else who carried their past written on their skin, who understood that survival came with a price. The water moved around him as he scrubbed dust and sweat away. And she thought of baptisms, of washing clean, of new beginnings that never quite erased what came before. The humming stopped, and he went very still. "I know you're there," he said quietly, not turning around. Been knowing for about a minute now. Heat flooded her face. "I'm sorry, I heard water. Thought maybe—" "It's all right." He moved deeper, preserving modesty, but didn't seem panicked. "Though you might want to either come out or head back. Standing in the brush makes you look like a threat." She stepped into the clearing, rifle pointed at the ground, feeling foolish. "I was worried. You were gone a while." "Found their tracks. They're definitely moving something big through the notch." He gestured at his discarded clothes on the bank. "Figured I'd wash off the trail dust before coming back. Didn't mean to worry you." "I wasn't—" She stopped, forced herself to meet his eyes. "All right, I was worried, not used to having someone around to worry about." Something shifted in his expression, a softness that made him look younger despite the scars. "Been a while since anyone worried about me, too." They stayed like that for a moment, the sunset painting everything in warm tones, the river singing its eternal song. Then Maeve deliberately turned her back. "I'll wait by the boulder. You should probably get dressed before Pike and his boys show up." Probably wise. She heard water sloshing as he moved toward shore. "Though I doubt they'd give us time to explain." She laughed, despite everything. "No, their minds tend toward the scandalous. Widow woman and a drifter alone by the river. They'd have us married and bedded before you could say water rights." The casual mention of marriage and bedding made her stomach do strange things. She focused on the rifle in her hands, the rough bark of the cottonwood, anything but the sound of cloth against skin as he dressed. "You can turn around now." He was buttoning his shirt, water still dripping from his hair. In the golden light, he looked almost young, almost hopeful. Then he turned to retrieve his gun belt, and she saw the scars again, the weight he carried. 2 years, he said suddenly. That's how long I've been running. Not from the law they cleared me of any wrongdoing. Running from the fact that I failed her, that witness. You can't save everyone. No, but you should be able to save someone who trusts you. He buckled on the gun belt with practiced ease. That's why I left Colorado. Why I've been drifting. Easier not to care when you don't stay long enough to matter. And now? He looked at her directly. Now I'm standing by a river with a woman who's about to take on impossible odds. And I'm thinking maybe running isn't the answer anymore. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Maeve felt something crack inside her chest. Some wall she'd built after Declan's death. Not breaking, not yet, but starting to show fault lines. Then gunfire shattered the evening quiet. 3 shots, rapid, from the direction of the station. Maeve was running before the echoes died. Jonah beside her, both of them crashing through brush with no thought for stealth. They burst from the tree line to see horses in the yard, Pike and 2 others, their guns drawn. Pike was grinning, smoke still rising from his pistol. "There's the lovebirds," he called out. My, missus. Callahan. Off alone with a strange man. What would the good people of Red Bluff think? Get off my land, Pike. Now, that's the question. Isn't it your land because the way Sheriff Kit sees it, you've got about 2 days left before it becomes Duval land? He holstered his gun with elaborate casualness. Just came by to deliver a message. Mister, Duval's willing to be generous. Full price for the property. Enough to set you up nice back east. All you have to do is sign. I told you. You told me no, but that was before. His grin widened. See, we know about the map. The real one. The one that shows where all the water really runs. Maeve's heart sank, but she kept her face neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know about the old Spanish aqueducts. Just like your husband didn't spend 5 years mapping every spring and seep in this valley. Pike pulled out a folded paper. Funny thing, we found this in his surveying notes at the land office. Incomplete, but enough to know you're sitting on the mother lode. Jonah had gone very still beside her. The kind of stillness that preceded violence. But before anyone could move, new riders appeared from the east. Not Duval's men, these moved different. Purposeful but not aggressive. The lead rider was Ada Finch, but not the prim schoolteacher from town. She sat her horse like someone born to it. And when her coat swung open, Maeve glimpsed the star of a deputy Hughes. Marshal. Evening, Pike, Ada said pleasantly. Gentlemen, having a prayer meeting. Pike's face went through several colors. Miss Finch, what are you? It's Deputy Marshal Finch. Actually, been watching you boys for months now. She produced a warrant with theatrical flair. Pike Harlan, you're under arrest for intimidation, conspiracy, and about 6 other things I'll remember when we get to town. You can't. This is territorial jurisdiction. Federal water rights make it federal jurisdiction. Funny how law works when you actually read it. Pike went for his gun. 3 things happened simultaneously. Jonah's hand moved like lightning. Knocking Pike's arm up, one of Ada's companions, a Shoshone warrior with intricate braided hair, put an arrow through Pike's gun hand, and Pike's own men threw down their weapons like they were on fire. Nobody move, Ada commanded, though the only one moving was Pike, clutching his pinned hand and cursing creatively. Running fox, if you please. The Shoshone warrior dismounted with fluid grace. Up close, Maeve recognized him, one of the Eastern band who'd traded with Declan for years. He bound Pike's wound with surprising gentleness, then tied his hands. You are the water woman. Running Fox said to Maeve, your husband was a friend to my people. We remember. Thank you, she managed, still trying to process the sudden reversal. Ada swung down from her horse. All business now. Mrs. Callahan, I apologize for the deception. I've been investigating Duval's operation for the federal prosecutor. Your telegram just accelerated our timeline. Clara Doctor, Moore's daughter. Safe. We extracted her this afternoon during the shift change. She's with her father now. Ada's smile was sharp. Duval doesn't know yet. We wanted him confident for tomorrow's big meeting at Devil's Mouth Canyon. How did you? I'm very good at my job. She turned to Jonah, studying him with professional interest. Mr. Avery. Or should I say Deputy Avery, so, yes, I know who you are. What happened in Colorado wasn't your fault. Jonah's jaw tightened. Tell that to Sarah Haynes. I can't, but I can tell you that the man who killed her is serving life in federal prison. We got him on other charges. She paused. Your testimony in absentia helped put him there. Something passed over Jonah's face, not quite peace, but maybe the beginning of it. Maeve found herself reaching for his hand before she thought better of it. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm and solid. This is all very touching, Pike snarled. But Mr. Duval owns half this territory. You think one federal badge is going to stop him? No, Ada said cheerfully. I think 5 federal marshals, a company of cavalry from Fort Bridger, and a federal judge might do it, though. They'll all be here by tomorrow night. Pike's face went slack. One of his men actually whimpered. Take them to town. Ada instructed her companions. Book them for attempted murder, conspiracy, and whatever else you can think of. I'll be along shortly. As the prisoners were led away, Ada turned back to Maeve and Jonah. Now, about this map Duval wants so badly. I assume you have plans. Maeve smiled for the first time in hours. Oh, yes. Would you like to see what Declan really found? They went inside, where Maeve pried up the loose floorboard. The real map was there, along with Declan's detailed notes. She spread it on the table, and Ada whistled low. The whole valley's connected underground. The Spanish missionaries spent decades building aqueducts, channeling water from the mountain springs. Most people forgot, but the Shoshone remembered, and they told Declan. Maeve traced the blue lines with her finger. With the right maintenance, there's enough water for everyone. Duval's hoarding upstream would be pointless. But he doesn't know that. No, he thinks if he controls the surface water, he controls everything. Jonah studied the map with growing appreciation. So, tomorrow at Devil's Mouth, he'll show his hand, Ada finished. In front of federal witnesses. Beautiful. Running Fox had remained silent through this. But now he spoke. The water remembers its path. My grandfather helped the Spanish priests build these channels. The knowledge was meant to be shared, not hoarded. And it will be, Maeve promised, if we survive tomorrow. You will, Ada stood, adjusting her coat. But tonight, I'd suggest you prepare. Duval's going to be desperate when he realizes Pike's missing. He might try something before the meeting. She left with Running Fox, promising to post guards discreetly around the property. Maeve and Jonah were alone again, the lamplight making a circle of warmth in the gathering darkness. You held my hand, Jonah said quietly. You were hurting about the witness. That's not why you did it. She met his eyes, saw something there that made her pulse quicken. No, it's not. He moved closer, slow enough that she could step away if she wanted. She didn't want. His hand came up to cup her cheek, work roughened but gentle. Maeve, when this is over. Don't. She put her fingers against his lips. Don't make promises before a fight. It's bad luck. Then what can I do? She thought about the river, about water washing away dust and pain in the past, about the scars they both carried and the hope that maybe, together, they might heal. You can kiss me, she said, just once, so I know what I'm fighting for tomorrow. He did, and it was like coming home after a long, cold journey. His lips were warm, patient, asking permission with every movement. She gave it, leaning into him, feeling safe for the first time in 3 months. When they parted, both breathing shakily, she saw her own wonder reflected in his eyes. That's worth fighting for, he said roughly. Yes, she agreed. It is. Outside, night had fallen completely. Tomorrow would bring Duval and all his fury, federal marshals and cavalry, and the final confrontation over water and justice. But tonight, in the circle of lamplight, two scarred souls had found something worth believing in again. And somewhere in the darkness, water flowed through ancient channels, patient and eternal, waiting to reveal its secrets. Asterisk, asterisk, Part 4. Evidence, hostages, and the two-faced map asterisk, asterisk. Dawn came reluctantly, painting the sky the color of old blood. Maeve hadn't slept, spending the night perfecting the false map while Jonah kept watch. Now, as the first rays hit the kitchen window, "Doctor," Morse sat across from them, his hands trembling around a coffee cup. "I should have spoken sooner," he said for the third time, when Declan came to me with those marks on his throat. "You were protecting Clara," Maeve interrupted gently. "He would have understood." "Would he?" Moore's laugh was bitter. "I took an oath to do no harm, and I let them murder a good man." "Tell us exactly what you saw," Jonah prompted, his voice steady and professional. The former lawman in him had emerged fully now, taking statements, building a case. Moore set down his cup, gathering himself. "It was a Tuesday, week before he died. Declan came in after dark. Didn't want anyone to see. Bruises around his throat, deep ones, finger marks clear as day. Someone had tried to choke him." "Did he say who?" "No, just said he'd been asking questions in the wrong places. Found something about the old water systems that Duval didn't want known." Moore's eyes went distant. "He made me promise not to tell you. Mrs. Callahan said it would only put you in danger." "What else?" Jonah pressed. "Every detail matters." He had a torn piece of paper in his pocket, part of an old survey. Looked Spanish. There was a symbol on it like a water wheel, but different. He said it was the key to everything. Maeve's breath caught. She knew that symbol. It was on Declan's private map, marking the central control point for the entire aqueduct system. "After he died," Moore continued, "I wanted to speak up, but that same night, they took Clara, said she needed special care at the Duval Ranch. Made it clear what would happen if I talked." "Where exactly were they keeping her?" Ada Finch asked from the doorway. None of them had heard her arrive, a skill that probably served her well as a marshal. "The old line shack near Hawk's Notch, 2 guards, changed every 6 hours. Moore's voice gained strength. "She managed to get word to me through the laundry woman. Smart girl, my Clara. Used our old code from when her mother was sick." Ada nodded, filing the information away. "We'll need your formal statement for the federal prosecutor. But first, we need to discuss strategy for tonight." She spread a surveyor's map on the table, marking positions with practiced efficiency. "Duval's called a water rights meeting at Devil's Mouth Canyon, ostensibly to discuss fair distribution. But we know better. He plans to announce his control of all water sources, backed by Sheriff Kit's guns." "How many men?" Jonah asked. "At least 20, maybe more. He's pulling in every hand from the Double D." Ada's smile was sharp. "What he doesn't know is that we'll have 30 federal marshals positioned around the rim. The cavalry's already moving into blocking positions on the roads." "Seems like overkill for a water dispute," Maeve observed. "This is bigger than water rights. We have evidence linking Duval to 3 other murders across the territory. Railroad speculators who wouldn't sell, homesteaders who found gold on their property." Ada tapped the map. "Your husband was just the latest, but he was also the smartest. He left evidence." "The false map," Jonah said, understanding. "We let Duval find it, let him think he's won. And he'll confess everything in front of federal witnesses." Ada's eyes gleamed. "Men like Duval can't resist gloating. It's their weakness." Maeve stood, went to the window. The morning sun illuminated the valley, showing the brown patches where water had been diverted, the dying cottonwoods along what used to be streams, All of Duval's work, turning abundance into scarcity for profit. "What about Clara?" she asked. "Is she truly safe?" "Stationed with 3 marshals at the school. She's teaching them card games and winning their month's wages." Ada's expression softened. "She's a remarkable child. Asked me to tell her father she's proud of him." Moore made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "I don't deserve—" "You protected your daughter the only way you could." Jonah cut him off. "No shame in that." A dust cloud on the horizon caught their attention. Riders approaching fast. Everyone tensed, hands moving to weapons. But Ada held up a hand. "That'll be Running Fox and his scouts. They've been tracking Duval's cattle movements." The Shoshone warriors rode in like ghosts given form, their horses barely winded despite the obvious distance they'd covered. Running Fox dismounted with fluid grace, accepting water from Maeve with a nod of thanks. "The cattle are poisoned," he said without preamble. "Not dead, but sick. Duval plans to blame it on bad water, claim the whole valley's contaminated except for his sources." "Son of a—" Jonah bit off the curse. "He's creating a crisis to sell the solution." "Exactly." Running Fox pulled out a leather pouch. "But we have this water samples from 6 sources, tested by my people's methods. All clean. The poison is in the feed, not the water." Ada actually laughed. "Oh, that's perfect. He's going to hang himself with his own rope." She turned to Maeve. "Now, about this false map. You said you've prepared something special." Maeve retrieved the forgery, laying it beside Declan's original for comparison. "See here, I've marked water sources that don't exist. Ignored the Spanish infrastructure entirely. According to this, the only reliable water is on Duval's current property, and one spring right where he's been trying to buy out the Hendersons. But I've added something extra," she continued, pointing to tiny notations in the margins. "These symbols, they're real survey markers, just misplaced. Any surveyor worth his salt would recognize them, realize the map's been altered. So it's believable enough to fool Duval, but would never hold up in court," Jonah said admiringly. "Brilliant." "Declan always said the best lie was mostly truth." Maeve's voice caught slightly. "He'd appreciate the irony of using his own techniques against his killers." They spent the next hour refining their plan. Moore would return to town, visibly shaken, and let slip that Maeve had agreed to negotiate. The false map would be accidentally visible when Duval's spy, everyone knew it was banker Hutchins, made his daily visit to the saloon. "Remember," Ada cautioned, "Duval has to believe he's winning right up until the moment we close the trap. Any hint of federal involvement beyond my supposed investigation, and he'll rabbit." "What about Sheriff Kit?" Jonah asked. "He's not stupid, just corrupt. He might smell a trap." "Kit's too invested now," Ada said. "His whole power base depends on Duval's money. He'll double down rather than admit he backed the wrong horse." A commotion outside interrupted them. Through the window, they saw a lone rider approaching under a white flag. As he got closer, Maeve recognized him. Thomas Brennan, Duval's foreman. Unlike Pike, Brennan was a professional, dangerous in his competence rather than his cruelty. "I'll handle this," Maeve said, but Jonah was already beside her. "Together," he said firmly. "No more facing them alone." They met Brennan in the yard. He stayed mounted, hands visible, projecting calm authority. "Mrs. Callahan, Mr. Avery." He touched his hat politely. "Mr. Duval sends his regards and an invitation. He's hosting a gathering tonight at Devil's Mouth Canyon. All the major landowners will be there to discuss water distribution going forward. And if I don't attend..." Brennan's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "That would be unfortunate. Mr. Duval has information about your late husband's activities that might interest the territorial authorities. Survey fraud is a serious charge, federal even." The threat was elegant in its simplicity. "Come, or be destroyed by the very law that should protect you." I'll consider it, Maeve said evenly. Mr. Duval hopes you'll do more than consider. He's prepared to be generous. The past can stay buried, if everyone's reasonable. Brennan's gaze shifted to Jonah. That goes for all past indiscretions. Colorado was a long time ago. After he left, Maeve found herself shaking with rage, using Declan's honesty against him, making his integrity into a weapon. Easy. Jonah's hands settled on her shoulders, grounding her. That's what they want you angry, not thinking straight. We stick to the plan. Inside, they found Ada writing rapidly, encoding messages for her scattered marshals. Running Fox had spread his own map on the floor, marking approach routes and escape paths with colored sand. One more thing, Moore said quietly. There's a hidden lever in the line shack where they kept Clara. She told me about it opens a cache where Pike kept his records. Might be useful. Records. Ada's head snapped up. Pike was always writing in a little book. Times, dates, who paid who. Clara saw him hide it there. Ada was on her feet instantly. Running Fox, can your men... Already going, the warrior said, gesturing. Two of his scouts melted out the door like smoke. They'll have it before sunset. The day wore on with the peculiar quality of time before battle, too fast and too slow simultaneously. Maeve found herself checking and rechecking the false map, adding tiny imperfections that would make it seem more authentic. Jonah cleaned weapons with a methodical precision, muscle memory from years of law work. As afternoon shadows lengthened, one of Running Fox's scouts returned at a gallop. He carried a leather-wrapped bundle, which he presented to Ada with visible excitement. The woman-child spoke truth, he said, hidden exactly where she said. Ada unwrapped it carefully, revealing a worn ledger filled with Pike's cramped handwriting. Her eyes widened as she read, flipping pages with increasing speed. This is everything, she breathed. Names, dates, amounts, every bribe, every threat, every accident for the past 2 years. She looked up, eyes bright with triumph, including detailed notes about Declan Callahan's murder, who ordered it, who carried it out, how much they were paid. Maeve sank into a chair, overwhelmed. He documented murdering my husband. Pike was nothing if not thorough. Ada said gently, this proves premeditation, conspiracy, murder for hire. Duval and Kit are finished. If we can get them to the canyon. Jonah reminded them, if they don't spook, they won't. Ada's smile was predatory. I'll have one of my men accidentally let Kit see me leaving town this afternoon. He'll think I'm out of the picture. As the sun began its descent, they made final preparations. Maeve dressed carefully in her best remaining dress, the widow playing her part. She tucked the false map into a document case, visible but not obvious. You don't have to do this, Jonah said quietly. They were alone in the kitchen, the others having departed for their positions. Ada has enough evidence now. Yes, I do. Maeve checked the small derringer hidden in her sleeve. For Declan, for Clara, for everyone else Duval has crushed. She met his eyes. For us. He kissed her then, fierce and quick. Stay alive, he ordered. Whatever happens, stay alive. Same to you. They rode out as the sun touched the horizon, painting the world in shades of gold and shadow. Behind them, Salt Cedar Crossing stood empty and waiting. Ahead, Devil's Mouth Canyon opened like a gateway to judgment. The trap was set. Now all they had to do was survive until it closed. Running Fox appeared beside them as they neared the canyon, materializing from the gathering darkness. Everything is in position, he reported. My warriors hold the high ground. Your marshals are hidden among the rocks. The soldiers wait beyond the eastern ridge. And Duval, already there, 23 men, including Kit and 6 deputies. They've built fires, set up tables, very confident. His smile was sharp. Pride comes before the fall, as your holy book says. Maeve gripped the document case tighter. Inside was more than just a false map. It was justice for Declan, freedom for her valley, and perhaps a future she was only beginning to imagine. "Then let's give them a fall to remember," she said, and rode down into the canyon where her enemies waited. Asterisk, asterisk, Part 5, Grass Fire, Hail, and Lessons about Water Flow, asterisk, asterisk. The smell hit them first, smoke carrying on the wind, acrid and wrong. Maeve pulled up her horse, scanning the darkness beyond Devil's Mouth Canyon. Orange light flickered against the sky to the south. "The Hendersons' pasture," she breathed. "They're burning the grasslands." Jonah was already turning his horse. "If that fire reaches the canyon with this wind, everyone inside will be trapped." Running Fox appeared beside them, his warriors materializing from the shadows. "This is not part of Duval's plan. Someone else strikes." They rode hard toward the flames, joined by other riders' neighbors, marshals abandoning their positions. Everyone who understood what a grass fire meant in drought season. The fire line stretched across the horizon, a wall of destruction moving with terrible purpose. "There," Ada Finch pointed through the smoke. "Riders with torches, heading east." But chasing them would mean abandoning the fire. Already. The wind was shifting, pushing flames toward the homesteads scattered along Sweetwater Creek, including Salt Cedar Crossing. "We need a fire break," someone shouted. "Burn a line the fire can't cross." "No time," Jonah said grimly. "Wind's too strong. It'll jump anything we can create." Maeve's mind raced. Water. They needed water, but the nearest stream was miles away and mostly dry besides, unless... "The Spanish aqueducts," she said suddenly. "Running Fox, your grandfather helped build them. Where's the nearest access valve?" The warrior's eyes lit with understanding. "The old mission wall, half a mile north, but it has not been opened in 20 years. "Then we'd better pray Declan's maintenance held." She turned to the growing crowd. "Everyone who can ride, follow me. The rest of you, get the families to safety." They rode through smoke and scattered embers, the fire's roar growing louder behind them. The mission wall appeared through the haze, crumbling adobe with symbols carved deep into the stone. Maeve leaped from her horse, running her hands over the worn surfaces. "Here," Declan had shown her once, made her memorize the location. A stone that looked like all the others but moved when pressed just right. She threw her weight against it. Nothing. The mechanism was stuck, decades of dirt and neglect holding it fast. "Let me." Jonah was beside her, adding his strength. Running Fox joined them, then others, all pushing against ancient stone while the fire painted the sky bloody. With a grinding protest, the stone shifted. Behind it, a wooden wheel emerged. The old valve control. Maeve grabbed it, tried to turn. The wood crumbled in her hands, rotten with age. "No, no, no." "Wait." One of the Shoshone warriors produced a tomahawk, wedging it into the wheel's spokes. Using it as a lever, they slowly forced the mechanism to turn. 1 revolution, 2. A rumbling came from beneath their feet. Then, blessed and impossible, water burst from the old channels along the mission wall, a dozen hidden outlets suddenly alive with flow. It spread across the dry earth, racing south toward the fire line. "It's not enough," Ada said, calculating distances. "The fire will still..." Thunder crashed overhead, so sudden and violent that several horses reared. The clear night sky of moments ago was suddenly roiling with clouds, black and heavy with promise. "That's impossible," someone muttered. "There wasn't a cloud." Another thunder crack, and the sky opened. Not rain hail. Chunks of ice the size of marbles pelted down, bouncing off hats and shoulders, hissing as they hit flame-heated ground. The temperature plummeted 20 degrees in as many seconds. "The old mine?" Maeve shouted over the roar. "Silver King mine take shelter?" The abandoned mine shaft was a black mouth in the hillside, barely visible through the supernatural storm. People and horses crowded inside, pressing deep into the mountain's protection while outside. Nature went to war with itself. The hail grew larger golf balls, then eggs, then fists of ice that could brain a man. But where they struck the fire line, they exploded into steam and water, smothering flames faster than any human effort could manage. "This isn't natural," Jonah said, having to yell even in the mine shelter. "Storms don't form like this." "Cloud seeding," Ada shouted back. "I've heard of it. Some of the mining companies experiment with silver iodide, trying to make rain for their operations, but nothing this dramatic." Running Fox stood at the mine entrance, seemingly unbothered by the violence outside. "The earth remembers," he said, though his words were nearly lost. "Water calls to water, the old channels awaken what was sleeping." Inside the mine's deeper chambers, families huddled together. Maeve found herself organizing, directing, falling back on skills learned running the station. Blankets appeared from saddlebags. Children were comforted, minor injuries tended. "Mrs. Callahan." It was young Tom Henderson, barely 16 and trying to look brave. "Our house, Willity." "Houses can be rebuilt," she said firmly. "Lives can't. Your family is safe. That's what matters." The boy nodded, squaring thin shoulders, and went to help with the horses. Maeve watched him go, thinking of all the young men and women who deserved better than Duval's greed. "You're good at this." Jonah had appeared beside her, a cut on his forehead where hail had found its mark. Leading, "People trust you." "They're scared. Anyone would—" "No." He caught her hand. "Not anyone. You make them believe it'll be all right. That's a gift." Outside, the storm's fury was beginning to ebb. The hail became rain, then drizzle, then nothing. They emerged cautiously to find a transformed landscape. The fire was out, doused by ice and the spreading water from the aqueducts. Steam rose from blackened earth, creating an otherworldly fog. "Look!" Someone pointed skyward. Stars were appearing again, as if the storm had never been. But evidence lay everywhere, hailstones like scattered pearls, slowly melting. Scorched grass ending in a precise line where water and ice had stopped the advance, and flowing still from the mission wall, the steady stream from the old aqueducts. "We need to close the valve," Maeve said, "before it drains the reservoir." But when they returned to the wall, they found the mechanism had shifted again. The flow continued, but regulated now, sustainable. "The old priests built well," Running Fox observed. "It knows how much to give." People began to gather, drawn by the miracle of water in the drought-stricken land. The Hendersons, whose pasture had been the fire's target. The widow Martinez with her 7 children. Old Sam Coulter, who'd homesteaded here before there was a town. "Duval did this," Henderson said flatly. "Tried to burn us out when we wouldn't sell." "Can't prove it," someone else said. "His men were all at the canyon meeting." "Not all of them," Ada corrected, producing a scorched torch with the double D brand burned into its handle. "Marshal Reeves found this, and boot prints. We'll match them." "Won't matter," Coulter spat. "Kid'll say we planted evidence. Judges'll believe whoever pays them most." A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd. This was the heart of it, not just Duval's crimes, but the system that enabled them. The death of faith in justice itself. Maeve stepped forward, feeling the weight of their eyes. These were her neighbors, Declan's friends, people who'd suffered in silence because fighting back seemed impossible. "You're right," she said, and felt their surprise. "The law's been twisted, badges bought and sold, good men like my husband murdered for trying to do right." She paused, meeting eyes, seeing pain that matched her own. "But water doesn't care about badges," she continued. "It doesn't recognize property lines drawn by greedy men. It flows where nature intended, through channels built by hands that understood sharing. She gestured to the flowing aqueduct. This water saved us tonight. Not Duval's hoarded streams, not his damned rivers. Water that's been waiting 100 years for someone to remember it exists. What are you saying? Henderson asked. I'm saying maybe it's time we stopped playing by their rules. Maeve felt Jonah shift beside her, protective but not interfering. The Spanish priests who built these waterways, the Shoshone who helped them, they understood something we forgot. Water belongs to everyone. That's nice talk, the widow Martinez said bitterly. But Duval has the guns. Does he? Ada stepped forward, badge gleaming in the torchlight. Because I count 6 federal marshals here. I see 20 families who know how to shoot. I see Shoshone warriors who've kept the old knowledge alive. She smiled. Sharp as winter. Seems like the numbers are shifting. What about the cavalry? Someone called. Governor's troops. Funny thing about that storm, Ada said innocently. Washed out the eastern road something terrible. Take the cavalry an extra day to get here, maybe 2. Understanding rippled through the crowd. Time. They had time before official forces arrived. Time for, justice, Maeve said quietly. The real kind. Not law twisted to serve the rich, but justice like water flowing where it's needed most. You're talking about taking the law into our own hands. Coulter said. I'm talking about taking our water into our own hands. Maeve pulled out the real map. Declan's true legacy. Every spring, every seep, every underground river. It's all here, connected, meant to be shared. She spread it on a flat stone, and people pressed close, seeing their valley as Declan had seen it, not divided by arbitrary lines, but united by water's patient architecture. Duval's meeting, Henderson said slowly. He's still there, waiting for you to bring the fake map. Then maybe I should deliver it, Maeve said, with all of you as witnesses to what happens next. It's dangerous, Jonah warned quietly. Cornered men do desperate things. Then it's good I won't be alone. One by one, nods appeared, agreements, commitments. Not a mob, Maeve wouldn't let it become that, but a community, finally ready to flow like the water they depended on. We go organized. Ada took charge with natural authority. Groups of 5, armed but not aggressive. We're witnesses, not vigilantes. And if Duval objects? Someone asked. Running Fox spoke from the shadows. Then he learns what the waters knew all along, that some forces cannot be damned forever. They prepared quickly but thoroughly. Weapons cleaned of fire ash and hail damage. Horses rested and watered. Ada sent 2 marshals ahead to alert the others at the canyon. As they mounted up, Maeve felt Declan's presence strongly. Not a ghost, she didn't believe in such things, but a purpose, flowing through her like water through ancient channels. Ready? Jonah asked, bringing his horse alongside hers. No, she admitted, but water doesn't wait for ready. It just flows. They rode out together, 30 souls united by disaster and determination. Behind them, water continued to flow from the mission wall, patient and eternal. The fire was out, but a different kind of heat was building. In Devil's Mouth Canyon, Silas Duval waited with his purchased law and hired guns, confident in his power. He had no idea what forces were flowing his way. The night was far from over, and justice, like water, would find its level. Asterisk, asterisk. Part 6. The Canyon Session. Confessions and the Dam. Nearly broken asterisk. Asterisk. Devil's Mouth Canyon lived up to its name that night. Torches lined the narrow entrance, casting dancing shadows that made the rock walls seem to writhe. At the canyon's heart, Silas Duval had created his stage tables laden with food and drink, maps spread like conquered territories, and enough armed men to make his point clear. Duval himself stood at the center, a man who'd eaten well while others starved. His suit was Denver cut, his boots polished to mirrors, everything about him declaring that money made its own laws. When he saw Maeve's party approaching, his smile spread like oil on water. "Mrs. Callahan, I was beginning to worry you'd miss our little gathering." His voice boomed off the canyon walls, performed for an audience. "And you've brought friends. How quaint. My neighbors have an interest in water rights. Mr. Duval," Maeve said evenly, dismounting with Jonah's steadying hand at her elbow. "Seemed only proper they attend." Of course. The more witnesses to progress, the better." Duval's eyes glittered in the torchlight. "Sheriff Kit, make our guests comfortable." Kit emerged from the shadows, badge prominent, hand resting on his pistol. "Folks should remember this is an official territorial meeting. Any disruption will be handled accordingly." "Wouldn't dream of disrupting progress," Ada said sweetly, her marshal's badge conveniently hidden beneath her coat. They arranged themselves around the makeshift arena, Duval's men on one side, the community on the other, tension thick as summer honey. Maeve noted the positions of the hidden marshals, caught Running Fox's subtle hand signal that his warriors held the high ground. "Now then," Duval proclaimed, spreading his arms like a tent preacher, "let's discuss the future of water in this valley. As you all know, the recent drought has made clear what I've been saying for years. Individual water rights are inefficient, wasteful. What we need is centralized management." "Your management," Henderson called out. Duval's smile never wavered. "I have the resources. Yes, the expertise, the connections to bring real progress, railroads, industry, growth. All it requires is consolidation of assets." "You mean theft," the widow Martinez said flatly. "Like you tried with my husband's claim before he died." "Your husband's death was a mining accident, Senora. Tragic, but hardly—" "Funny how many accidents happen to folks who won't sell," Coulter interrupted. Duval's jaw tightened, but he maintained his politician's composure. "I understand emotions run high in difficult times, which is why I'm prepared to be generous. Market price plus 20% for all water rights, cash on the barrel." "And those who won't sell?" Maeve asked. "Well, there are legal mechanisms. Back taxes, for instance." His eyes found hers. Predatory. "I believe you're familiar with those. Mrs. Callahan." This was her cue. Maeve produced the document case, letting torchlight catch its brass fittings. Around the canyon, people shifted, sensing the moment approaching. "Before we discuss my taxes," she said clearly, "perhaps we should establish what we're really talking about, the true extent of the valley's water resources." Duval leaned forward, hunger naked on his face. "You have documentation." "My husband spent 5 years mapping every water source in the territory." She opened the case slowly, theatrically, including some that certain parties might have preferred stayed hidden. "Now, Maeve," Kit warned, but Duval waved him silent. "Let her speak. Sheriff, we're all friends here." But his voice had changed, carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. "What hidden sources?" Maeve unfolded the false map with ceremony, angling it so Duval could see but keeping it from his reach. "The Spanish were here long before us, Mr. Duval. They built things to last." She watched his eyes trace the fabricated water lines, saw him swallow hard at the fictional springs marked on his own property. The trap was baited perfectly, showing him controlling even more water than he dreamed. If only he could eliminate the other claims. "Fascinating," he breathed. "And you have the full documentation surveys, depth measurements, flow rates." "Everything." She rolled the map carefully. "Of course. Such valuable information needs protecting. Wouldn't want it falling into the wrong hands." "Name your price." "Justice for my husband." Silence crashed through the canyon like a physical force. Duval's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and reptilian beneath. Your husband's death was investigated. By Sheriff Kit, whose salary you supplement. By judges who dine at your table. Maeve kept her voice level, though rage burned in her chest. I want the truth. Mr. Duval, here, in front of everyone. You're overwrought. Kit stepped forward. Maybe we should postpone. No. Duval's arrogance reasserted itself. Let her have her dramatics, then we can proceed with business. He turned to the crowd. You all knew Declan Callahan. Good man, but reckless. That horse of his. Never threw him once in 8 years, Maeve interrupted. But somehow, on a clear day, on a trail he'd ridden 1,000 times, it suddenly forgot how to run. Accidents happen. Yes, they do. Like Miguel Martinez's mining accident, like Ben Sawyer's wagon accident, like the Hendersons' grass accidentally catching fire tonight. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Duval's men shifted nervously, hands drifting toward weapons. Careful, Mrs. Callahan. Duval's voice dropped low. Slander is a serious charge. So is murder. The word hung in the air like a hanged man. Then Duval laughed harsh, dismissive. Murder. You have no proof, no witnesses, nothing but a widow's grief and imagination. He turned to the crowd. This is what I mean about inefficiency. Emotional decision-making. Women shouldn't be handling complex business matters. Pike Harlan handled it, didn't he? Maeve pulled out Pike's ledger, Ada having slipped it to her moments before. Your enforcer kept such careful records. Every payment, every threat, every accident arranged. Duval went very still. Where did you Pike would never? October 15th. Maeve read. Received $500. Callahan job complete. Made to look natural as instructed. She looked up. Your man's handwriting. Mr. Duval. Your money. Forgery, Kit barked. Clear fabrication. Then you won't mind if federal investigators examine it. Ada stepped forward, revealing her badge. Deputy U.S. Marshal Ada Finch. I'll be taking that ledger as evidence. The canyon erupted. Duval's men went for their guns. The community responded, and for a moment violence teetered on a knife's edge. Nobody move, Ada commanded, her voice carrying absolute authority. First man to draw gets federal charges added to whatever else they're facing. You have no jurisdiction, Kit started. Federal water rights make it federal jurisdiction, plus murder for hire crosses territorial lines. Ada smiled coldly. I've had wonderful telegraphs with the Denver office about you, Sheriff Kit. That's when Duval snapped. Not with rage, but with the icy calculation of a man who'd always bought his way out of consequences. None of this matters, he said quietly. Evidence can disappear. Witnesses can have accidents. Even federal marshals aren't immune to tragedy. He pulled out a pocket watch. Checked it. In about 10 minutes, the temporary dam upstream is going to fail. Catastrophically. Flash flood should scour this canyon clean. Gasps and cries arose from the crowd. The canyon walls suddenly seemed much higher, the exit much narrower. You're bluffing, Jonas said, but his eyes were already measuring distances. Am I? Duval's smile was winter cold. My men have been working on that dam for weeks. Amazing how unstable packed earth becomes when you add a few sticks of dynamite to the base. You'd kill everyone here. Maeve couldn't hide her horror. Your own men. Acceptable losses. I'll survive, I always do. And with the witnesses gone, who's to say what happened? Tragic accident during an illegal gathering. Sheriff Kit tried to warn them. He shrugged. I'll rebuild. Buy the flooded land cheap. The railroad will still come. That's when they heard a distant rumble, like thunder underground. The dam! Someone screamed. Run! Chaos exploded. People rushed for horses, for the narrow canyon exit. Duval stood calm in the center, checking his watch again. 500 feet of water, he said conversationally. Should hit in about 8 minutes now. Jonah was already moving, not toward escape, but toward the canyon wall. "The explosives," he shouted. "If there are charges in the dam, there might be charges here too, to seal the canyon." Understanding hit like cold water. Maeve spun toward Duval. "You never intended to let anyone leave." "Progress requires sacrifice." He backed toward a rope ladder she hadn't noticed before, leading up the sheer wall to a ledge. "Your husband understood too much. Threatened to expose the whole network. Water rights were just the beginning. There's silver under this land. Copper, maybe gold. The railroad needs it all." "Papa." The child's cry cut through everything. Clara Moore burst from behind the supply wagons where she'd been hidden, running Fox close behind. "Followed us," the warrior said tersely. "Couldn't catch her in time." Dr. Moore reached for his daughter, but she twisted away, running straight to Duval. "You said you'd let my papa go if he stayed quiet. You promised." Her small fists beat against his legs. "You're a bad man, a liar." Duval backhanded her casually, sending the child sprawling. The canyon went silent except for the growing rumble. That silence lasted exactly 1 heartbeat. Then Moore launched himself at Duval with a father's rage. Jonah moved to help, his fist connecting with Brennan's jaw. Maeve found herself fighting too, using nails and elbows and fierce determination. "The wall!" Running Fox shouted. "The charges!" Through the melee, Maeve saw them small bundles placed at crucial points, fuses already lit. The explosion would bring down tons of rock, sealing the canyon like a tomb. Jonah, the fuses. He was already running, long legs eating distance. One fuse yanked free, then another, but there were too many. Spread too far. "Everyone out," Ada commanded, firing her pistol skyward. "Move now." The rumble was louder, closer, in the mountains above. Something massive was moving. Duval had reached his ladder, climbing with surprising agility. "You can't stop progress," he screamed. "The future belongs to men of vision." "The future belongs to everyone," Maeve shouted back, then grabbed Clara and ran. They barely made it. The third charge blew just as the last riders cleared the canyon mouth, bringing down a curtain of rock. Dust billowed, obscuring everything. Then the water hit, even muffled by the fallen stone. The sound was terrifying, millions of gallons slamming into the canyon with the force of God's own fist. The ground shook, horses screamed, people fell to their knees. But they were alive, all except Duval, someone whispered. He was still in there. The water found cracks in the fallen stone, spraying through with devastating force. Anyone still in the canyon was gone, crushed or drowned in seconds. "The ledge," Jonah said suddenly. He might have made the ledge. They circled around, climbing the ridge that flanked Devil's Mouth. Dawn was breaking by the time they reached a vantage point. The canyon was a lake now, dark water still swirling with debris. And there, on a narrow ledge 40 feet up, sat Silas Duval, alive but trapped, the ladder gone. No way up or down. "Help me." His voice was thin with fear. "I'll pay anything, everything." The crowd gathered at the ridge's edge, looking down at the man who'd tried to murder them all. Justice was there for the taking. One pushed rock, one cut rope, and Duval would join his victims. "What do we do?" someone asked. It was Maeve who answered, thinking of Declan, of flowing water and patient justice. "We arrest him," she said simply. "We try him in federal court with all the evidence. We show everyone that justice flows stronger than corruption." She looked at Ada. "Can you get him down safely?" Ada nodded, already directing the operation. "He'll live to see trial. Whether he lives much past conviction is another matter." As they worked to rescue the man who'd killed her husband, Maeve felt Jonah's hand find hers. "That was brave," he said quietly, "choosing law over revenge." "That was Declan," she corrected. He believed in doing things right, even when it was harder. She squeezed his hand. Besides, I want Duval to live a long life, in a very small cell, remembering how he lost everything to a widow with a map. The sun rose fully, revealing the devastation below. The temporary dam's failure had indeed scoured the land, but also opened new channels, spreading water to areas that had been dry for years. "Look," Running Fox pointed. "The water finds its own justice." It was true. The flood had washed away Duval's fences, his posted signs, his careful boundaries. Water flowed free across the valley, following paths old and new, bringing life wherever it touched. "It's like the land is healing itself," Clara said wondrously, her face bruised but eyes bright. Out of horror had come hope, out of one man's greed, a community's rebirth. Justice, like water, had found its level at last. Asterisk, asterisk. Part 7, The Long Shadow of the Badge. Sheriff Kit and the Black Ledger asterisk, asterisk. The sun climbed higher over Devil's Mouth Canyon, revealing the full extent of the flood's destruction. But as the rescue operation for Duval continued on the ledge, hoofbeats thundered from the east. Sheriff Kit arrived with 15 deputies, their horses lathered with hard riding. "Stand down, all of you," Kit roared, his face purple with rage. "This is territorial jurisdiction. I'll arrest every one of you for conspiracy, attempted murder, and destruction of property." The crowd turned to face him, exhausted but unbowed. Ada Finch stepped forward, her federal badge gleaming. "Sheriff Kit, you're just in time to witness the arrest of Silas Duval for multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, and attempted mass murder." Kit's laugh was ugly. "You've overstepped. Marshal, this is my territory, my authority. Federal badges don't mean nothing out here." He gestured to his men. "Arrest her, and the Callahan woman, and that drifter Avery." His deputies spread out, hands on weapons. Several were men from town, but others were hired guns, faces hard with professional violence. The community found itself outnumbered and outgunned. "You can't arrest everyone," Henderson said, stepping forward despite his wife's grabbing hand. "Watch me." Kit's smile was cold. "Illegal assembly, destruction of territorial property that dam was legally permitted, assault on a prominent citizen." He looked directly at Maeve. "And murder, Silas Duval's missing, presumed drowned. You all had motive." "He's not dead," Jonah said evenly. "He's trapped on that ledge. I don't see anyone. Just a mob that attacked a lawful meeting." Kit raised his voice. "Anyone who doesn't disperse immediately will be arrested. Anyone who resists will be shot." The standoff stretched taut. Maeve could feel the crowd's fear returning. They'd survived flood and fire, but the corrupt law still had teeth. "Sheriff, Doctor," Moore stepped forward. Clara's hand clutched in his. "Before you do something that can't be undone, you should know we have Pike's ledger." Kit went very still. "What ledger?" "The one documenting every bribe, every payment, every order." Moore's voice gained strength. "Including the ones with your name on them." "You're lying." October 10th. Ada read from memory, the actual ledger being secured as evidence. Paid Kit $200 to backdate tax assessments. November 3rd. Kit confirms Judge Bott will rule our way on water rights. December 1st. Kit requests additional payment for Callahan matter agreed to $500. Each date hit Kit like a physical blow. His deputies exchanged uncertain glances, loyalty wavering. Forgeries, Kit snarled. Desperate lies from desperate people. Then you won't mind if we check your boots, Maeve said suddenly, remembering something. The night Declan died, there were distinctive tracks at the scene. Boot prints with silver-tipped spurs, size 10, left heel worn down. Everyone looked at Kit's feet. His fancy boots with their silver spurs seemed to gleam in accusation. Lots of men wear spurs, he blustered. But how many were paid $500 the next day? Ada pressed. We have bank records, sheriff, deposits matching Pike's payment dates. The deputies were backing away now, creating distance between themselves and their boss. One, a young man named Stevens, actually switched sides, moving to stand with the community. It's over, Warren, Stevens said quietly. We all knew something was wrong, but we kept quiet out of fear or greed. No more. You backstabbing little Kit went for his gun. Three things happened simultaneously. Jonah's hand blurred. Knocking Kit's arm up, an arrow sprouted through Kit's gun hand, pinning it to his holster, and Ada's pistol appeared, aimed rock steady at his head. Don't, she said simply. Kit stood frozen, arrow through his hand, comprehension dawning that his reign was over. But he had one card left to play. You think this ends with me? He laughed, high and slightly mad. You have no idea how deep this goes. Railroad consortiums, mining interests, politicians in Washington. They'll send an army to get what's under this land. Maybe, Maeve said, but they'll have to go through all of us. Us, Kit mocked. A bunch of farmers and shopkeepers, a widow and a failed lawman. You'll be crushed like insects. That's when Running Fox spoke, his voice carrying the weight of generations. Not just them. The Eastern Shoshone stand with the Waterkeepers, as do the Arapaho, the Crow, all who remember the treaties broken and lands stolen. More riders appeared on the ridge's native warriors, silent and watchful. The numbers had shifted dramatically. Kit's bravado finally cracked. You can't. This isn't how it works. I'm the law. No, said a new voice. You're a criminal wearing a badge. Everyone turned to see Judge Theodore Marshall riding up with an escort of federal marshals. The territorial judge was known for his integrity, one of the few who'd refused Duval's bribes. Judge Marshall. Ada greeted him with visible relief. Perfect timing. Marshal Finch's telegrams were quite illuminating, the judge said, dismounting carefully. I've brought federal warrants for Kit Duval and 24 others. The territorial governor is also very interested in reviewing certain land deals and water rights claims. He looked at the arrow still pinning Kit's hand. Someone should probably see to that. We want him healthy for trial. As doctor, Moore moved to help. More truths emerged. Kit, sensing his fate, tried to bargain. I can give you names, he babbled. The whole network. Senator Walsh is getting kickbacks. The Surveyor General's been redrawing maps. There's a plan to... Save it for court. Judge Marshall cut him off. Though I suggest you start with explaining why your boot print matches the one found at 3 murder scenes. The morning had turned into something unprecedented, corrupt law being replaced by justice in real time, as Kit was arrested by his own former deputies. As the rescued Duval was brought down to face charges, the community began to realize what they'd accomplished. We need to formalize this, Ada said, addressing the crowd. Form a proper water cooperative. File the correct papers. Make it all legal and binding. The Salt Cedar Water Cooperative, Maeve suggested. Equal shares based on need and contribution, not wealth or threats. With the Shoshone as full partners, Running Fox added. The old knowledge preserved and respected. I'll draw up the papers. Judge Marshall offered. Pro bono. It's the least I can do after letting corruption fester so long. The sun was high now, warming faces that had known too much darkness. People began talking, planning, hope growing like water-fed plants. But Maeve noticed Jonah standing apart, watching the horizon. What's wrong? She asked, joining him. This isn't over. Kit was right about one thing: there are bigger forces at play. They won't give up easily. Then we'll face them together. She took his hand. The whole community. That's what water teaches us. Individual drops are weak, but flowing together, we can carve through stone. He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. Together, he repeated. I like the sound of that. Before Maeve could respond, Clara Moore ran up, tugging her father behind her. "Mrs. Callahan, Papa has an idea." "Doctor." Moore looked embarrassed, but determined. "The medical supplies Duval hoarded enough to serve the whole valley for years. I propose we establish a community clinic, free care for cooperative members." "And a school," Ada added. "A real one, teaching practical skills alongside books." Ideas flew like birds released from cages. A communal grain store for hard times, shared equipment for drilling wells, a fund for families hit by disasters. "It's like Declan dreamed," Maeve said softly, tears threatening. "A community bound by water and mutual aid." "He'd be proud." Jonah said, "You've honored his memory in the best way possible." As the day wore on, the shape of the new order emerged. Judge Marshall held impromptu court, taking statements and issuing rulings. The false water rights were voided, the stolen lands restored. Duval's assets were seized to compensate his victims. But the real victory was in the faces around Maeve neighbors who'd been divided now, united, native and settler working together. The artificial boundaries of greed washed away like flood debris. As sunset approached, painting the valley in shades of gold and rose, Ada approached with a final piece of business. "The federal prosecutor wants to offer you a position, Jonah," she said. "Full reinstatement as a marshal. Your record cleared. Back pay included." Jonah was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Maeve, at the community gathering for an evening meal, at the valley stretching endlessly under the vast sky. "Thank him," he said finally. "But I've found where I belong." Ada smiled like she'd expected that answer. "Then how about special deputy for the water cooperative? Someone needs to keep the peace when the railroad lawyers show up." "Now that," he said, "I might consider." The evening meal became a celebration. Tables appeared from wagons, food emerged from saddlebags, and someone produced a fiddle. Under the stars, beside the waters that had nearly killed them but ultimately freed them, the community of Salt Cedar Crossing was reborn. Maeve stood watching it all, Declan's map in her hands. Tomorrow would bring challenges, legal battles, threats from distant boardrooms, the hard work of building something new. But tonight, there was music and laughter and the sound of free-flowing water. "Dance with me," Jonah said, appearing at her elbow. "Here now. When better, we've survived flood and fire, corrupt law and would-be murder. I think we've earned one dance." She let him lead her into the circle of dancers, the fiddle playing a waltz older than the territory. Around them, their community celebrated Anglo and Hispanic and Native, all bound by water and choice rather than blood or birthplace. "I love you," Jonah said quietly. The words meant only for her. "I know it's too soon, too fast, but facing death clarifies things. I love you. Maeve Callahan." She looked up at him, this scarred man who'd chosen to stand and fight rather than run, who'd helped her save not just her land but her whole community. "I love you too," she whispered. "Declan would have liked you, would have wanted this me living, not just surviving." They danced as the stars emerged, as the water sang its eternal song, as their valley began to heal from the wounds of greed. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. But tonight, under the vast western sky, justice flowed as freely as water, and love grew in ground once thought barren. The cooperative was born not in violence but in choice, not in revenge but in hope. And in the sheriff's abandoned office, Kit's silver spurs lay forgotten, their shine forever tarnished by the truth. Asterisk, asterisk. Part 8. Gentle winter. Budding spring. Water and promises, asterisk. Asterisk. The winter of 1878 to 79 came gentle to the Sweetwater Valley, as if nature itself recognized the need for healing. Snow fell soft and steady, replenishing the aquifers, filling the Spanish channels with promise for spring. At Salt Cedar Crossing, Maeve stood at her kitchen window, watching Jonah repair the stable roof, his breath clouding in the crisp air. 3 months had passed since Devil's Mouth Canyon. 3 months of legal battles, federal investigations, and the slow, careful work of building something new. The official papers had arrived yesterday. The Salt Cedar Water Cooperative was recognized by the territorial government, with federal protection under the Desert Land Act. Historic. Judge Marshall had called it the first truly integrated water cooperative in the Western Territories. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Ada Finch entered, shaking snow from her marshal's coat, no longer hidden, worn proudly now. "Morning, Maeve. Thought you'd want to see these." She placed a stack of newspapers on the table. "We made headlines from Denver to Washington." The stories varied in tone but shared common themes: corruption exposed, justice served, community triumphant. Duval and Kit were awaiting trial in federal prison. Senator Walsh had resigned in disgrace. The Surveyor General faced investigation. "Any word on the railroad?" Maeve asked, pouring coffee. "They're coming, but on our terms now. The cooperative's charter requires them to pay fair market value for any water usage, with profits shared among all members." Ada's smile was satisfied. "Including our Shoshone partners." Through the window, they watched Running Fox teaching young Tom Henderson how to read the old channel markers. The boy's eagerness reminded Maeve of Declan's passion for learning from the native peoples. "Doctor, Moore sent word." Ada continued. "The clinic's ready to open. Clara insisted on painting a mural in the waiting room, scenes of the valley with everyone working together." "That child," Maeve said fondly, "after everything she endured." Children are resilient when they have hope. Ada stood. "Speaking of which, I should mention there's talk of you running for the Territorial Council. First woman ever nominated." Maeve nearly dropped her cup. I'm not a politician." "No, you're better. You're trusted." Ada headed for the door. "Think about it. The valley needs a voice, and you've already proven you won't be silenced." After she left, Maeve found herself outside, drawn by the sound of hammering. Jonah looked up from his work, a smile creasing his weathered face. "Eavesdropping again," he teased. "Listening to the rhythm of building," she corrected. "It sounds like the future." He climbed down, pulling her into his arms despite the sawdust and sweat. "Our future." They'd been dancing around this for months, the question of what came next, of promises made permanent. Maeve had held back, not from doubt but from respect for Declan's memory, for the proper passage of time. "I went to his grave yesterday," she said quietly. "Talked to him about you, about us." Jonah waited, patient as always. "I told him I was ready to live again, really live, not just survive." She looked up at him. "He would have wanted this, would have liked you, a man who stands for justice, who protects what matters." "Maeve," his voice was rough with emotion. "Ask me," she whispered. "Whatever you've been waiting to ask me now." He stepped back, went to one knee in the snow despite his bad leg. From his pocket, he produced a simple silver ring, polished smooth. "Maeve Callahan, you've taught me that running isn't living, that some things are worth standing and fighting for. You've given me a home, a purpose, a community." He took a breath. "Will you give me forever too? Will you marry me?" "Yes." No hesitation, no doubt. "Yes, Jonah Avery, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her as snow fell around them like nature's blessing. When they parted, both were crying and laughing at once. "When?" he asked. "Spring," she decided. "When the water runs high and the valley blooms. When life returns fully. A church wedding? Something better." She took his hand, led him toward the house. A celebration by the river where everything changed. All communities represented circuit preacher for those who wanted, Shoshone ceremonies for blessing the union, mariachi from the Mexican families. Everyone who fought for this valley should witness its future. The rest of winter passed in preparation and promise. The cooperative grew stronger, adding members from neighboring valleys who'd heard of their success. The clinic opened. Doctor, more treating patients regardless of ability to pay. The school expanded, with Ada teaching law and rights alongside letters and numbers. When spring arrived, it came with a rush of snowmelt that set the channels singing. The old Spanish aqueducts carried water to fields left dry for years. Desert bloomed into garden. Brown transformed to green. The wedding day dawned perfect sky so blue it hurt to look at. Wildflowers carpeting the riverside meadow. Half the territory seemed to have come. Wagons and horses creating a temporary town. Maeve stood before her mirror in the dress she'd sewn with help from the Martinez women, not white. For she was no virgin bride, but soft sage green like hope itself. Clara Moore had woven flowers into her hair, chattering excitedly about being flower girl.
"You look beautiful,"
Ada said, adjusting the draped sleeves.
"Declan would be so proud of what you've built from his loss."
"We built it," Maeve corrected. "All of us together." The ceremony itself blended traditions like streams joining a river. Reverend Patterson from the circuit spoke of love and commitment. Running Fox performed a water blessing, pouring from a vessel containing water from 7 sacred springs. The mariachi played while vows were exchanged in 3 languages, witnesses from every part of their community. Jonah's voice was steady as he promised to love, protect, and stand beside her until the waters ceased to flow. Maeve's was clear as she vowed to be his partner in drought and flood, in struggle and celebration, as long as the earth endures. When they kissed as husband and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in Denver. Then the real celebration began, tables groaning with food, fiddles and guitars creating music that transcended origins, dancing that lasted until stars appeared. "Look at that," Henderson said, pointing to where his son Tom was dancing with a Shoshone girl, both laughing at their clumsy steps. "Year ago? Wouldn't have believed it possible." "Water teaches us," Running Fox observed. Separate drops evaporate. Together, they become rivers. As the evening wound down, Maeve found herself by the river with Jonah, watching moonlight dance on the water. This same river had witnessed tragedy and triumph, death and rebirth. "No regrets?" Jonah asked softly. "None." She leaned into him. "That day at the river, when the sunset caught you in the water, I knew then something was changing, not just desire, but recognition, like my soul knew yours." The widow's eyes wouldn't look away, he murmured, echoing the moment that had changed everything. "And now the widow is wife again. The drifter has roots. The valley has justice." She turned in his arms. "We did more than survive. Jonah, we transformed poison into possibility." "Together," he agreed. "Always together." The water sang its eternal song as they stood there. 2 people who'd found each other in loss and built love from the ashes. Around them, their community continued to celebrate not just a wedding, but a future where water flowed free and justice ran as deep as the hidden springs. In years to come, the story would pass into legend how a widow and a drifter stood against an empire of greed, how water rights became human rights, how the Salt Cedar Cooperative sparked a movement that spread across the West. Treaties would be honored, communities integrated, resources shared rather than hoarded. But tonight, there was just the river and the stars and 2 hearts finally at peace. Maeve Callahan Avery looked at her new husband, at her chosen family celebrating nearby, at the valley blooming with shared prosperity. Declan's dream had become reality, but shaped by many hands, many hearts. "Ready to go home?" Jonah asked. "I am home," she said simply. "Wherever you are, wherever our people flourish, wherever water runs free, that's home." They walked back to the celebration hand in hand as the river sang its blessing and the future spread before them like an unwritten map, waiting to be explored together. The Salt Cedar Water Cooperative would endure for generations, its story told in classrooms and courtrooms as proof that justice, like water, always finds its level when people stand together.
And sometimes, just sometimes, love flows strongest where the land has known the deepest drought.
Thank you so much for listening to this story. Friends, I'd love to know where in the world you're enjoying these tales of the Old West. Please share in the comments below where you're listening from so we can connect and share our thoughts about Maeve and Jonah's journey. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to Wild West Night. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help more people discover these stories of love, justice, and community in the American frontier. Until our next adventure under the western stars, keep riding tall in the saddle.